So thank you everyone for joining us for today's Boren Awards information session. We're really happy to welcome Michael Saffel from the Boren Awards to share information about both the undergraduate scholarship and graduate fellowship program. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Laura Collins. I'm the director for the Office of Scholar Development and Fellowship Advising. And we support students at all levels of their study in applying for awards like this program that you're going to learn more about today. If you're interested after today's session in learning more about how to get started with an application, please, I'll put my email in the chat, but feel free to reach out to us. We're in Armitage Hall on the second floor, and we would love to meet with you. And with that, I'd love to turn it over to Michael.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the time today. I'm happy to be here. My goal of this presentation is to give you guys a rough idea about what is Boren Awards, what our objectives are, what the government is trying to get out of this award, but what also you can get out of this award. So that is really, this is one of those programs that has goals not only for you, but also for the folks sponsoring it. This program is looking for U.S. citizens only. You have to be a U.S. citizen to be eligible for the program. The program is funded by taxpayer money. It's through the Department of Defense. You need to be interested in studying in a region of the world we actually go to. So Boren was created basically to get students out of Western Europe, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and get them to visit other parts of the world, what we call less commonly visited, less commonly taught languages. These are the kind of things we're looking for in Boren. You need to maintain your student status, and you can't be a dual citizen of the country you're heading to. So if you are a dual citizen of, for example, Ghana, and you wanted to apply for Boren to study in Ghana, to study a country, it isn't something that we would be able to help you with because of the rules of the program. It doesn't mean you can't apply for a Boren. What it means is that you can't apply for Ghana, which you would apply for some other country in that part of the world or something entirely different. And also, you need to be interested in public service. We say public service a lot in this application. What we mean by public service is government service. So working for the federal government. That is one of the goals of the program, is to get you into federal work. More students who have overseas experiences and who have studied a language. That's the goal of the Boren. That's the gist. And that's why the federal government is offering significant financial help to do this. The basic eligibility requirements can be found on our website. Throughout this presentation, there is a QR code that will now and then show up in the right top corner. That QR code is going to basically take you to the part of our website that is most germane. Because this is my website is less than, I would say less than easy to navigate. These QR codes can really help you out. Funding. What does the Boren provide when it comes to this to help you study abroad? For the most part, for 90% of the Boren Award money is handed to the student to pay for programs that they find. So we are, generally speaking, a pure scholarship for the most part. We have a couple exceptions, but I'll get to those. But the idea is the longer you're overseas, the more award funding you will receive. If you can go overseas for our preferred amount of time, which is 25 weeks or longer, that's 6 months, you can get the full amount of funding, $25,000. If you can only do a semester, you can get $12,500. If you are not in a science, technology, engineering, or math major, and as an undergrad, 12 weeks is the minimum. An international relations major, a business major cannot do an 8-week program. Those are only for STEM students. If you are a STEM student, that's an option. You can also stay overseas for 6 months. It's up to you and what your schedule allows. But the STEM option is only for undergraduate STEM students. Those folks get $8,000 for a summer program. That's very similar to a Boren, a Gilman Award who adds language to their program, about 8K. Whether you are overseas for 8 weeks or 52 weeks, you still owe the federal government 1 year of federal service. So it doesn't matter how short or how long your program is. But ideally, you're applying to this Boren scholarship as an undergrad or fellowship as a graduate student. You are applying to Boren because you want to work in the federal government. It is not a it's not a penalty. It's not a penalty or a chore. You should only be applying to this program if you are interested in federal work. Now, that $25,000 up to can help pay for things like your airfare, your tuition, materials, food and lodging, and stuff like that. Program-related expenses is what we call it. What we don't cover and you need to consider are the things or those bills that follow you overseas. While you're overseas, you can't work, right? Even if you have a nice online work from home job, while you're overseas, you have to be a 100% full-time student, which means that you will have to be able to pay. You have that 25,000 to help pay for program costs, but you need other funds to pay for your credit card payments if you have them, car payments if you have them, and other non-Boren related costs. So it's something to think about in the back of your mind to say, all right, how much do I really need so I can live overseas for at least 3 months? If you happen to be in ROTC or you are a U.S. veteran, these two groups do very well on the Boren. This is a Defense Department project. If you are in ROTC, you've probably heard of Project Global Officer, but even if you haven't, ROTC students are very, very attractive to Boren Selection Committee. ROTC students tend to have, I think 2024, they were selected at a 69% acceptance rate. And veterans over the years have, the last recent 2 or 3 cycles have had a 57% acceptance rate. So make sure if you fall into one of these groups, you hit the button that asks. Everyone is going to have to make an argument about the country they're interested in. And that argument is, what is the national security link between country X and the US? For the most part, there could be a broad variety of ways to make this argument. If we use Japan as the example, there are multiple reasons why Japan is important to US national security. The problem for you is going to narrow it down to one. We only give you 800 words to answer this question in essay 1. So we need you to come up with one good national security argument for why the country you want to go to is important to US national security, tying those 2 countries together. If you were an economics major, you would make probably an economics argument or an economic argument about why Japan is important to US national security, or why Brazil is important to US national security, or whichever country it is you want to go to. You do not have to come up with 4, 5, 6 different reasons why it's important. That becomes unfocused, seems very generic, and what honestly we would expect to come out of a ChatGTP essay. If you punched in, give me a national security argument for Japan in ChatGTP, they're going to give us a lot of answers, a lot of different reasons. Focus on one that is caters to your major, to what your interests are, or at the very least to what you want to do in federal government after you graduate. The public service argument is, what do you want to do in the federal government? Now, remember, this program is, the whole purpose of this program is to get your foot in the door in federal work. For the most part, Boren is going to help with that, giving you opportunities to, a lot of these are entry-level positions, but it gets you in the door. It lets you apply to jobs that very few people will be able to apply to with the type of hiring authorities that you will receive as a Boren. But in the application, the committee wants to make sure that this is something that you're actually interested in, that you've done your research and you have ideas about where it is you want to work. So in your SA2, when you talk about federal work, talk about it in stages. Talk about where you want to see yourself, you know, as soon as I graduate, I will start looking for jobs in this agency. Some of the agencies I've seen, you know, advertising on the Boren website are this and this, and I would then work my way through to get into a higher position or a different position within that agency. And you show a long-term interest in federal work when you talk about government jobs like that. This allows the committee to say, oh, okay, even if they don't get this particular job that they're talking about, we know that they've done their homework. It looks like they know exactly what they're getting themselves into, and they seem like a good choice. That's really the goal of SA2. Do you understand what you're signing up for if you take Boren funding? If you've never thought about working for the federal government before, I suggest three things to do. Talk to your academic advisor. Find out where people in your major work for the federal government. They're going to give you a lot of good ideas. Maybe talk to the career office as well, career services on campus. We also have a web part of our website, which is where that QR code points you to, and this, and I have the address directly on the bottom of this slide. You can look to see where Boren have fulfilled their service over the years, over 5,000 Boren. So this gives you a really clear idea of which agencies and the number of Boren that have worked for those agencies. And it breaks it down fairly well. The priority agencies, and really when you're talking about national security in your SA1, think about these four agencies first. And that national security argument is still very, very wide. It can be coming from different places. But the idea is that these are the jobs, these are the agencies that are priorities for the program, meaning that it behooves you to think about jobs that would fulfill service, that would also be something you are interested in, and that the Boren experience will help you as an applicant get your foot in the door through one of these four agencies. For some of you, you already want to work in the military, so you're in ROTC, or it is something that you plan to do when you graduate. Great. Department of Defense obviously is where you're going to look at. There are also over 1 million civilian jobs at DoD, so you may be interested in that. The Department of Defense, sorry, Department of Homeland Security has a lot of jobs, FEMA, TSA, you know, and others. There are opportunities there. Department of State is where the Foreign Service is, right? We also put USAID in there. And of course, we have the intelligence community, think the NSA, DIA, Space Force, things like that. Wide variety of opportunities there and wide variety of ways to define national security depending on the agency. How CIA defines national security is a lot different than how USAID defines national security. So you kind of find a program, agency, and then when you make your national security argument, ideally it's going to have a connection to the kind of job you want to do in the federal government. There should be a connection between SA1 and SA2. Now, you may end up working in a tier 1 agency when you graduate. We give you, and I'll talk about it, but we do give you 3 years after you graduate as an undergrad to find work in the federal government. While you're trying to get a job maybe as an FSO, a Foreign Service Officer at State Department, you may get an email from Boren, or you may go to a career fair on campus, and the Peace Corps is hiring, or CDC, you know, agriculture, somebody is hiring. That job may count toward your service as well. And when you look at that list of 5,000 careers, you know, places where Boren to fulfill their service, you're going to see all of these agencies and a lot more. So there are other ways to fulfill service, not just in tier 1. I bring this up, not that you would necessarily talk about these in your application, because we do want to stick to tier 1 to make you more competitive, but more of a reassurance that, you know, there are a lot of opportunities, there are a lot of agencies in the government, and no matter what you read, we expect that there are still to be a lot of opportunities in the government when you're looking for work down the road. that will fulfill your service. Not to mention that we also accept contracting positions in the tier ones as well. So I'm a contractor for the DoD. What I do would count toward my Boren service. If I had Boren service to worry about, I've been working here 20 years. I have more than fulfilled service at this point. But this is something that is possible. When it does come, you have finished your Boren, you're about to graduate, or you just recently graduated, we give you, again, 3 full years to start working for the federal government. So in those 3 years, we will be helping you. There is the National Security Education Service Team. That service team, their sole job is to help you get your interview. They can't help you. We're not going to put you in a job. This isn't going to guarantee you a job, but what they do is find agencies that are hiring, find agencies that will take advantage of your hiring authorities. They reach out to the agencies directly to see if there are jobs that the agency can post on their website, which is the link here on the QR code. And you can see what agencies are hiring Boren right now. Some of these are positions that anybody can apply to. A lot of these are positions that only Boren can apply to. And you will see that in that link, it will say NSEP exclusive opportunities, meaning that if you apply to that as a Boren, somebody who has already been overseas on the Boren program, you and only a handful of other Boren are likely to be applying to that job. The employers in the federal government are taking advantage of your special hiring authorities, which allows them to hire you at a lot faster rate than somebody right off the street. These hiring authorities will also help you apply to jobs that people like myself, who have never been full federal employees, can't apply to. I can't apply to half of the jobs on usajobs.gov because I've never been a federal employee. Your hiring authorities will help you do that. And we also have our own job fair. We call it the seminar. We have that every September. We have our alumni association, and we do things like resume consulting. So there is a lot of work here that is put in, again, because the goal of this program is to get you working. We've had Boren, I think we've had nearly 8,000 Boren over the years, over the last 30 years. 97% of Boren have been able to fulfill their service. 97%. So that's pretty strong. The 3% who were not able to fulfill service did have to repay their award, though, and that is something you need to know. You have those 3 years, but you need to find work in the federal government. It may take you another year or two to fulfill your service if you've started the process. But at the end of the day, if you do not fulfill service, it is that 25,000 or that 12,500 or that 8,000 has to be repaid. Now, we do have a language component to this program. This is a language program. So one of the things that we have changed this year is we have a minimum of 15 to 20 contact hours, which needs to be in your application. So the program you select overseas, you need to make sure that it has a significant amount of language in that program. So when you go to your study abroad office and you say, okay, so Brianna Chang here, she's one of our alumni ambassadors this year, Florida A&M University student. And when she picked out her program for Mandarin in Taiwan, she made sure that it had a significant amount of Chinese classes. So she had the calligraphy class, she had her pronunciation and grammar class, right? So she had multiple classes that allowed her to get to that 15 to 20 hour mark. I have already had emails from students who found programs at their school or that their school offers that are capped out at 12 hours a week. It is okay to do that program and just add on in your application, say, I will also get tutors to supplement that 12-hour program. So that 12 hours of language that I'm formally sitting in a classroom for will be supplemented with 3 to 6 hours of tutoring a week, which Boren funding can help pay for, right? So now you're lifting your total hours a week over the 15-hour minimum. Have goals for your program. If you've never studied Mandarin before, you're not expected to go from nothing to fluent. right? Especially if it's only a shorter program. And to be honest, to study Mandarin or Hungarian and some of these more complicated languages, you probably need years to become fluent in a language. Have realistic goals. If you've never studied the language before, maybe intermediate is your goal. I'm going in there, I'm studying full time. I have 15 to 20 hours at least a week of language. I expect to be at intermediate by the time I complete my Boren. That's a realistic goal. If you already have language, let's say you're a heritage speaker, have a little higher goal. I've already studied 2 semesters of Arabic. I'm going to Qasid in Jordan to study. I'll be there for 8 months. I expect my Arabic to be at advanced low, maybe advanced mid by the time I finish. Have goals. Show how you're going to achieve those goals. And if you are interested in programs, most students' first stop is study abroad office. They go to their study abroad office and they find out what's available. And I'll talk more about how to select a program. But this is important. You really want to make sure that you are focusing on the language and culture of the program you're selecting. A lot of international programs that schools offer are aimed at Americans who don't want to study language as much as you do. So though you got to make sure the program you choose is appropriate for Boren. The two types of programs that we fund, 90% are self-identified programs. That's where most of our money goes to. And then 10% of our funding goes toward our FLEs, our regional flagship language initiatives. Now, the self-identified program structure, that's what most of you will do. Based on the languages you guys were showing me, our most popular languages, Russian, Arabic, Mandarin, Japanese, Korean, Portuguese, all of these are self-identified program structures. You go to your study abroad office, you go online, you find a program, you tell us what that program is all about. And if you're selected, the money we give you pays for those programs. So sometimes this is called the choose your own adventure option, right? You are telling us what it is. In the application, you will punch in the information. You will drop in the digital brochure of the program. You're explaining to us what the Boren funding is going to help you with. If you go to your study abroad office and they are not able to find a program, or you're having a hard time finding a program in the country you're interested in, go to our link here, borenawards.org, recent language programs, and that way they will be able to kind of find programs that are there. And again, yeah, and I'm looking at your Rutgers Global will help you navigate your options. And I think that's great. I mean, most students go through their school because it's a lot easier that way. They know which programs are going to be available to you, which ones you're eligible for, and hopefully which ones will count toward credit. If you're an undergrad, 99% of you will do it this way. For the Boren Fellowship, that's the graduate students. If you apply for the fellowship down the road, a lot of the times they do a mix of language classes, internships, research, but that's really for grad students. I'll worry about that if I get questions. Now, the other type of funding we give out, which is far less, but it is for specific languages, we have our flagship language initiatives. These programs were created to help basically help us get get more students to apply to what we call less, they're less commonly studied languages, but they're very important to the program. These are programs that are very intensive, where we ask you to find a program that's 15 to 20 hours a week. These programs are 60 hours a week. They're very intense. They are small cohorts. So these are small class sizes, which helps, but also you have to be the type of person who works well in a group. These are fully funded. You get a transcript from the school that you attend for these classes. Roughly two years of language in one 6-month period. We split this up as a summer domestic program and an overseas fall program. There is the option to stay longer. I will talk about that if somebody asks me, but basically the idea is this is a language-focused program. The first program we were talking about is our original program. We started this one in 2010. It's called AFLI, African Flagship Languages Initiative. The main languages on this program are French and Swahili. The other languages are indigenous languages that are less popular, but we would still like to see people apply to them. The French and Swahili programs have the most applications every year. And since we have a lot of applications, we get a lot of awardees, and we have our own program set up in Senegal and Tanzania for those two languages. The programs in Ghana, Senegal for Wolof, and South Africa Zulu, we only get a handful of applications for. So we don't have our own programs overseas. If you were interested in this program and one of those three languages on the bottom three, uh, you're going to need help because you're going to need to talk to your study abroad office again and say, hey, I want to apply to this program. I'm Boren. I'm going to be at the University of Florida for the summer, but they don't have a program in South Africa for Zulu. What can I do? Again, we have a list of where students have gone in the last few years, but go to your school first. But if it's Swahili or French, we have the program set up. All of you are going to be, all the people who attend AFLI go to Florida for those first 8 weeks. Gainesville, Florida, which we pay for. And then you fly overseas, which we also pay for, to Senegal or Tanzania, to a program that we have already set up. So it's very established. You are able to go longer if you want to stay longer, and I will talk to anybody who asks questions about that. The second program we do, our final program, is CFLI. CFLI is a combination of Southeast Asian countries, Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam. This program was expanded last year to add Thailand and Vietnam. It was very successful. This program, all three languages are very popular for Boren, when it comes to Boren numbers. So we are able to have official programs in all three countries. The official programs, the summer program is at University of Wisconsin-Madison, and then you fly overseas to Indonesia, Thailand, or Vietnam, depending on the language you're interested in. For both FLEs, this one and this one, you do not have to have a background in any language except for French. If you apply to Swahili, any of the other indigenous languages, or any Indonesian, Thai, or Vietnamese, those languages you can be at an absolute beginner, never having studied a lick, or you can be a heritage speaker, anywhere in between. French is the only language that we prefer on Boren where you have to have roughly 2 years of language already under your belt. French has a very high level where you have to be at a very high level for a preferred language. It's the only language where we require that. Those of you not interested in the FLEs, which again is going to be most of you, this is a good look at the map of what we prefer. These green and blue countries are preferred countries on the Boren. The gray countries are out of bounds. We can't go there. The yellowish countries are countries that are in areas of the world we go to, but not necessarily a country we prefer. Actually, it's not preferred. Some of them are hard-nosed. There, you see North Korea as a yellow country. Some of them you can apply to. For example, let's see, Mongolia. Mongolia you can apply to, but these aren't preferred countries, and they don't have very strong acceptance rates. Mongolia has only been applied to twice in the last, it's been over 20 years, probably. 14? No, it's a little less than 20 years. We've had one application in 2007 and one application in 2017. So it's been a while for Mongolia. It's not preferred, so students avoid it. And the students are applying in Boren to preferred countries. Again, you're trying to keep in the rhythm of picking places where Boren wants you to go. It makes you a more competitive applicant. Now, the reason we have some countries that are green and some countries that are blue, and if you're colorblind, we have this on our website where you can just see the countries listed, and we have an asterisk instead of it being color coded. But the green countries are, at least as of 2024, and we hope for in 2025, or are fairly confident, are countries that are safe and we are able to send students. So if you apply to Brazil in 2024 or and going into 2025, we expect that to be a safe country for students to travel to. For most of these, their State Department travel, numbers are 1 or 2. Very few level 3, they're not travel warnings anymore, they're travel advisories. Very few State Department level 3 countries are preferred on Boren that we let Boren travel to. I think maybe one. Countries that are too dangerous right now, either it's an open war, like in Ukraine and Russia, um, or there is just not the infrastructure or safety that we would expect of, think Haiti right now. These blue countries were not allowed in 2024, and we do not expect to allow them in 2025. That's why they're blue. If you apply, for example, to Haiti to study next year, you're going to have a backup, because with Haiti, because it's a blue country, the system, the application system will force you to pick a backup country. Most likely Dominican Republic. It's probably the only other place you can study Haitian Creole. But if you pick Brazil, you do not have to have a backup. If you pick Japan, you do not have to have a backup. These are green countries. Now, 3 languages, our top 3, Mandarin, Russian, and Arabic, you do have to have a backup country no matter what color your country is. So if you choose Kazakhstan, which is green, your backup country, you're going to be forced to pick up a backup country, even though it's not a blue country. So it's only for the languages of Arabic, Russian, and Mandarin. You're going to be forced to pick a backup country. Do you have any questions about this? And I'm looking at the questions just in case. This map is a little rough, so some of your countries may be really small and you're not too sure what color it is. You can ask me. The language preferences is the language preferences are basically, as I said, all of these languages are preferred by Boren. None of them require a background except for French. The biggest issue, and I saw somebody talk about Spanish when before we started, the biggest issue here is Latin America, where we write Haitian Creole and Portuguese are our 2 preferred languages. And we look back at that map and we see that there are a lot of countries that don't speak Haitian Creole or Portuguese that are still green preferred for the Boren. So it makes it a little difficult, but there is a way around this. For the most part, if you have studied Spanish, we recommend you apply for Brazil. Apply to Brazil. It's a preferred country. You're studying Portuguese, which is the preferred language, and the committee knows you have Spanish in your background, and you will pick up Portuguese a lot faster than somebody without Spanish. So it's a win-win. For those of you who are really interested in going to Peru or are really interested in doing a program in that is not in Brazil, but in that part of the world, do not choose Spanish if at all possible. Choose an indigenous language. It's a much higher chance of you getting the Boren if you don't pick Spanish. You can apply to Spanish, and people apply every year. Last year, 0% of our Spanish applications got the award. So I strongly urge you to look at other options before Spanish when you apply to the Boren. It's not impossible. Most years we usually give 1 or 2 Spanish awards out of 300, 350 awards, but it is a very low percentage. It's very unlikely to get a Spanish award. I'd rather you apply to a different language. For those of you wondering if you're eligible for that STEM initiative, the majors, all majors on this slide are considered what we would say are preferred. But the green ones are the only ones that are eligible for that 8 to an 11-week Boren Award for $8,000 if you were interested in that. If your major isn't on here, I was an American Studies / theater major back in the day. None of those are on this list. It doesn't matter. If you are interested in federal work, if you are interested in learning a language, you can still apply. I don't care what your major is. You're going to have to make the same argument everybody else makes. It's just perhaps as a theater major or as an education major, you may need to sell it a little harder. Like, for example, having a sentence. It may seem strange that a theater major wants to work for the federal government, but here's how I got here, right? And you explain your what led you to this part of your academic life. The application itself is relatively uh, easy to get through. It's a free application, but it does cost you time. This application is uh, those who get the award for the most part are writing their essays multiple times, right? They get a draft, they start doing revisions, they show those drafts to their campus advisor, to the people writing your letters of recommendation, folks like that. And getting, taking notes, making revisions, taking notes, making more revisions, right? It is a process. It will take you time. Talking to your professors, talking to your supervisors if you have work experience, getting them to write letters of recommendation takes time. It takes finagling. You can't just throw their contact information into the website, hit, submit request and hope for the best. You can do that. I don't recommend it. I recommend getting in touch with the people who you want to write your letters of recommendation. And at the absolute minimum, explain to them what Boren is. Explain to them why you're applying to Boren, what your goals of the program are. Because when they write their letter of recommendation, it's going to make their letters a lot more germane to what Boren is asking. We don't get a generic, this is a great student, top 5% of my class. He or she is a wonderful, in an international relations student. That's fine, but it doesn't really help you that much. What we want to see from your letters of recommendation is that this student came to me talking about the Boren. He or she is very interested in study abroad, learning this language, and working for the federal government. I think this program is going to help them tremendously when they start looking for work at the Foreign Service Office or something like that, right? They are backing your play. And that kind of letter doesn't just happen. They need to know what the program is. They need to know who you are, what your goals are. So that takes time. The transcripts from Rutgers can be official or unofficial as long as they have, your most current grades and your name and Rutgers is on there somewhere on the transcript. Some of these unofficial transcripts are generic. They don't have your name or the school's name, so be sure that's on there if you're going to use it. And that research abstract is really only for graduate students who are doing a research component. We can talk about that if somebody has a question later. We talked about the essays. The good news is we have a webinar all about the essays that we put out last year. It's a little dated with the deadline days. I think I put the deadline dates on the end of that webinar. The webinar itself is still great. We haven't changed the essay prompts in 4 or 5 years. So the webinar is still good to listen to. Just don't worry if you see the deadline dates are January 2024. We're in January 2025. The deadline for the official program, the official Boren deadline for undergrads is January 29th, 2025. For graduate students, it's a week earlier. The earliest your Boren can start is June 1st, 2025. We have a mandatory convocation / orientation in Washington, D.C. That we paid to get you here for, but it has to be in person. We have a security briefing by the FBI to all Boren, and we can't miss that. And it's one of those things, if you know you're busy March 29th or March 30th, May 29th or May 30th of 2025 of next year, it's a Thursday and Friday, so hopefully you don't have a wedding or anything like that. But the 29th and 30th of May, you have to mark off on your calendars that if you get this Boren, you can't miss. You're going to be in DC. Our timeline right now, we're in the middle of, we're kind of at this gray one. We've already started the application. The application was opened in mid-August. We are in the middle of our tours, visiting campuses. We have 2 of our staff right now. One's in California, one's in Florida. I'm going to Bowie, Maryland tomorrow. We're doing our best to get students to know this exists, that this is a thing you can apply to. After Thanksgiving, most of us will be back at the office, and we're going to start helping those of you who have started applications. This is where we kind of focus on, okay, now you know about it. Let's see who started an application. Where do we go from here? So we're going to have some Ask Me Anything webinars. We're going to have some Final Touches webinars in January. We're going to be here to help you get across the finish line. Once you submit, we will notify students whether or not they receive the Boren in mid-April. We say mid to late April. It's been mid-April for the past 5 or 6 years, usually around tax day, April 15th, if that lands on a weekday. And then if you are accepted into the Boren, we'll give you a few days to say yes or no. But once you say yes, we're going to sign you up for the convocation. We're going to get you the hotel and airplane tickets so you can get over here for that, or train tickets. Since you're in Jersey, I don't know what's easier. If you want more, you can reach out to us. BorenAwards.org, that's our website. There is a About Us section right on the top left drop down, and there'll be Contact Us. If you click that on our website, you actually can sign up for a 15-minute Zoom call with one of us. If you really just want to chat about Boren, your national security argument, these are conversations you should be having with your letters of recommendation. You should be having it with your campus representative, but there is no reason you can't have it with us as well. If it's a question I can't answer because it's a Rutgers related question, I'll just tell you, this is something you need to ask your school. But we're more than happy to help you guys with your questions. I can't read your essays. That's your school. We'll help you with that. But if you have, I was thinking about making this kind of argument for national security. Does that sound feasible, right? Feasibility, flexibility. These are the two things we're always looking for in Boren. Sign up there, get a 15-minute on our Calendly. Again, we should have a lot more time in December and January for these. But we have 2 big breaks coming up. We have Thanksgiving break and we have our winter break. Schools are off. We're all, we're skeleton staffed. So you want to start working on this earlier than later. That is the end of the official presentation. Laura, did you want to add anything? And I'm here to answer questions if you have them.
Nothing specific to add. I think that was pretty comprehensive. So it seems like a good time for students to kind of share where they are in their journey, get to know folks in the room and ask questions.
Perfect. And I am on the comments if you want to add it to the chat, or you can unmute yourself. I believe you have the power to unmute yourself. All right, so far nothing. I know one of you said you were interested in Spanish. A couple of you said Spanish. So again, my general advice is you can still apply to Boren. Brazil Portuguese is your best shot. But if you really wanted to go to Peru, you could apply for Quechua. If you wanted to go to Mexico, you could apply for one of the indigenous languages there, Mayan, there's a bunch, Aztec. And even though they're not a preferred language compared to Spanish, it's a lot easier to get. We looked at the past 30 years, students who apply for indigenous Latin American languages have a over 50% acceptance rate. Whereas Spanish has, for the history of the program, has less than 8% acceptance rate. So you're really hurting yourself with Spanish. But that Spanish is a positive when you start applying for other languages. It's a positive when you apply to Portuguese, and it's a positive when you apply to an indigenous language, because we know it's important. The problem with Spanish is that it's already well spoken in the federal government. It's the #1 language spoken after English in the US and in the federal government. You can learn Spanish almost anywhere. So it's not considered a priority. So it's hard for the committee to shell out $25K so you can study a language which you could study in Camden without that much trouble, versus go study Portuguese, which is a lot harder to find classes that teach Portuguese. Or Quechua.
And how distinct and unique when you apply for those positions in the federal government to have that language skill set.
The old joke about, call somebody who speaks 3 languages trilingual, somebody who speaks 2 languages bilingual, somebody who speaks 1 language American. When you have 3 languages on your resume, it's interesting enough to have somebody with 2 languages, but adding a third it just really pops. And that study abroad, I don't care if you do Boren, if you apply to Gilman, if you apply anywhere, if you can get abroad, no matter how you get there, it looks really good on your resume. When I started applying to jobs after coming home from 2 years in Japan, rarely did anybody ask me questions about my time at Maryland. They wanted to know more about what was Japan like, what did you do there? How did you live, right? Because so few Americans study abroad. It's 10% of Americans study abroad. It's a very low number. That's 10% of college students, and as we found out recently, that less than half of the country went to college. So it can be a very unique skill slash experience slash work experience that you put in your resume that really could be of interest to future employers. And obviously, the federal government wants more folks to study abroad. That's why this exists. But even in the private industry, it's going to look good. If you are a STEM student who is expecting to work in like computer science or engineering, you're going to be in a multicultural, multi-international office, right? It is going to be something that the people hiring you will be like, okay, we know this person has worked overseas, has an international background. That's the kind of person we're looking for who can work in a very multicultural office. That's what I
Wonderful.
look for. I hire at Boren. We're always looking for people who have studied abroad, who have been Peace Corps volunteers or Boren or Jets. It's what we look for.
Absolutely. I think that career piece is so important. I think that's what our students are here to learn about. So this has been so helpful. For those of you in the room, I am putting our website link in the chat. From there, you can learn more about the Boren, of course, but also other awards that we support. And you can find our links to schedule one-on-one appointments to have an individual conversation following today's session or to learn more about the work that we're doing on campus. All right. So
Thank you
unless
very
there
much
aren't
for your
any other
time. I kept looking
questions.
in the wrong place because my camera was down here. So you got to look at my chin this whole presentation, but hopefully you guys had a good time. And again, boren@iie.org is my email address, and we're happy to take your questions later.
Thank you so much, Michael. Happy International Education Week.
Yes, halfway. Thanks, Kendall. Thanks, I.